working with the Aerospace Corporation. Here this weekend, my daughter, BU, freshman, so that's very exciting.
Let's go.
Oh, I know, awesome. So I want to provide some sort of a case study or a scenario around aerospace. Aerospace is one of, the Aerospace Corporation is one of 42 national laboratories around the country. They're congressionally mandated to work with the government. So it has more roles, looks more like a government agency than a commercial contract firm. We do a lot of their acquisition launch reviews. So of the 42 FFRDCs, federally funded research and development centers, aerospace is the one that's exclusively focused on space. So we stood up in, 1960, so we're 63 years old. There's a lot of data that we see and manage, and a lot of that, is in the form of papers, presentations, technical research reports, things like this. And it's kind of like a fortress, so we're realizing that all of those, some of the papers, have various levels of classification and distribution levels. We're really finding this important to make sure that all this information is digitized and shared more effectively and more appropriately to broader audiences. So I'm just going to talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing in sharing the data and how we're trying to resolve it. Again, because we work in the national security space, a lot of this information is classified. So that is probably the primary challenge we have in making the data more accessible to a broader group of folks. We did just write, within aerospace, we have a Center for Space Policy and Strategies, like a think tank within a think tank. And we are getting ready to release a paper on rethinking classification for folks who maybe don't have the level of access they need, and some legal ways to either get folks read in to be able to listen into the classified information just for a day. So just you'd be read in and then read out that same day. So that paper will be coming out soon, again, at aerospace.org. We also do a lot of digital twins, developing digital twins. So if you're looking to model, it's for modeling and simulation essentially. So if we are building a shuttle or something like this, and a lot of the SpaceX, a lot of launch companies use this, and so it's just basically a digital model of something you'd like to build. So that's sort of like an applied tool. And then, so one other sharing challenge that we're having, or industry is having, is, with classification, you're not able to share it, only with those who have a need to know. But we also are seeing that industry doesn't want to share their data and information because of, well, I don't want to say conflict of interest, but, for competitive purposes, they don't want to. So we're working a lot with, I think you all are aware of bills of materials. Basically, all the piece parts and all that information and data for, launch is included in that, and folks don't want to share that because they don't want to share who's in their supply chain, because I was just mentioning this, NASA has works with a lot of mom and pop shops that will produce a piece part, and they're sole source. They're the only company in the world that produces this, and so that's a challenge in itself. So what are we doing to ameliorate these challenges? So for the classification, number one, I just talked about the classification paper to try to help get information to the right people at the right time, to those who need it. I mentioned the temporary read-ins, and then for the digital engineering piece, we just created a template and a roadmap for how various space agencies, both private sector and government, can better digitize their information and share that more freely. And then the third one I just mentioned was the software bill of materials. So there's a BOM, which is physical parts, and then there's the software bill of materials. Again, it's that registry that provides visibility into the supply chain, and it allows for effective risk analysis, et cetera, mitigation strategies. There's also a paper on, it's called the STAR framework, and we included blockchain as sort of an infrastructure layer as part of, for trust and provenance. So trying to instantiate that in the space community, as a tool to protect data as needed. And let's see, what else do I want to share? Right, so the supplier bill of materials, you're able to ensure compliance. It helps with proactive risk management, et cetera, reduces vulnerability of where information should not be shared. So you can kind of contain that information only goes to the trusted parties that you're trying to share with. So across these are just some examples of the things we're trying to do in terms of digitizing, decentralizing. I know this is the scientific community, but the engineering community needs to do it too. Just so that we have, and there's been a huge push for trusted and assured data and information supply chain. So the word trust is is used so widely right now, just because obviously there's also challenges with adversaries, spaces being a contested environment, and so the better we can manage the data, the lower risk we will have, less vulnerabilities, and we're doing all we can, but it's going to take a village because we just have so much data. Even that aerospace has produced in technical reports for the last 63 years. And again, the 41 other national laboratories, if you saw Oppenheimer, that was all about Los Alamos National Laboratory, same type of organization as aerospace. Others include RAND Corporation is an FFRDC, as well as MITRE Corporation, and some of just the national laboratories that the Department of Energy manages. So big challenge, trying to better understand what tools are needed to ensure the trust of the data, but also better sharing of that data. I always say, how does aerospace get the inside out and not be such a fortress with the data that we do manage, produce, and secure. So that was just what I want to share. I don't know if there's any questions. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So if you could re-articulate, maybe I missed this, what is the main motivation of aerospace to wanting to get this data from inside out?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a change in government requests? Is it for collaboration?
Yeah. Well, it's been a constant challenge. It's something that I think we're seeing with this wave of need, trust, and the ability to be able to share it with the right people who have a need to know. It also just creates stronger space technology. When you're able to share more with a broader group, of talent pool, knowledge. So it's really that, and I think that the technologies now have arrived that we are able to ensure the trust of that data more so than we could in the past.
So if I may rephrase that, is there specific data points inside of aerospace that you would like to be able to share externally with their correct permissions? And is there a downside of using like a centralized database such as like Google Drive or something in that regime, or are you open to looking at are there flaws in centralization? So you're looking for decentralization specifically, or does it not matter?
So I'm not looking at the specific tools. I'm a generalist in the chief engineer's office, where we look at sort of bigger picture issues like cislunar, orbital mechanics and space traffic management, things like that. I think from our perspective, we also, as these space traffic management, cislunar, these big emerging areas that we're going to start working on, because we will have some sort of presence on the moon, contrary to what people think. I know it's coming. So even if maybe we start right now with providing trusted data with these emerging fields going forward. So yeah, it's just a hard thing to do. There's just a lot of data. So yeah. Yes.
I know this wasn't your intention, and forgive me if it's like a bad question. But you mentioned, about the adversarial nature of the data itself, and that there's going to be adversaries, and it's proprietary, NASA. There's with space travel in particular, there's that inherent connection between the military-industrial complex and space exploration and innovations. Is that rhetoric kind of not that relevant or appropriate in an increasingly globalized world where we're talking about the things outside of our planet? So, what are your thoughts on that? Again, I'm sure you're not a politician, right? But like, what are your thoughts on that?
So, are you thinking that because of the national security related aspects, and because space is becoming more contested, we have challenges with China. I mean, constantly getting pinged by China. Do you think they're at odds, basically, by decentralizing the data and sharing it more broadly, that might increase risk? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I think on the right premise, but I would say the concept of it being a risk is the issue I have. It's like we are increasingly in a globalized world where Chinese students make a large portion of, for example, engineering in this country, right? So is this concept of us going into the handling of this data with this fear that do you know what I mean?
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yes, it's kind of like counterintuitive to be doing that. I think the other premise that I come from, probably like academia. There are UARCs, University Affiliated Research Centers. Because we are like a university, a national laboratory, we find that it's important to share the information versus a private sector. I don't know if the private sector would initiate this sort of thing to share the data, if that makes any sense. So I think because we are, like a research institution, research and engineering, kind of put the value on sharing that information more so than the private sector would or would ever want to. So it's kind of like it's almost like an influence campaign. How do we make the tools available to the commercial sectors that they would be they would feel that the data would be trusted, that their data would be trusted if they had like PII, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why distributed ledger technology is such an influential should be adopted more broadly.
So from your perspective as the researcher, you're more pro open source data so everyone around the world can use it.
Right, exactly.
And when you say private, do you mean
private sector?
Yeah, does that also mean like the military as well?
No, private sector would be industry. Yeah. Like SpaceX, yeah.
Include military contractors. It would include military.
Yes. True.
Even like SpaceX has strict export controls.
Oh, right. ITAR is a big deal in space.
All of their stuff has military implications.
Yeah. Like dual use is what it is, the term, yeah.
So when being private is also the term private is also public.
So I hear what you're saying. Yeah, we say, So private sector, I just mean businesses and .coms. Yeah. Yes.
So do you view any definition of data availability and sharing in any sort of schedule of gradation, or is it on or off? Like everything is out there or everything's not out there? How do you manage the flow of information across all the research that you're doing and all the different categories?
Right. So, it is just internally we have, a library and we have librarians who've been working there for 63 years doing this. And again, we have classification, just like shuttle launch, they're all classified different ways depending on like the risk level, impact from a casualty, whatever. So, it's all just stored internally, and then the different distributions. One level is, government only. There's another that's government and contractors, and then there's a few other different levels. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, it's just on an internal web server.
Maybe just to follow up, because you're getting to it, is like one of the challenges I think about data availability and opening it up is like we have a structure for open source licensing, but not all data is under that sort of licensing structure. And then there's all the rest, right? So do you guys think about how you release data in the context of just the data itself and the information, or do you release it in the context of how you hope it's going to be used? So I want somebody to take this data to build something else. You know, I want some contribution or our research to come back to the lab, or is it just I'm pushing it out, this data that once I make it publicly available, I hope people do whatever good they will do with it.
Right, yeah, the latter. Yeah, so we're just trying to make sure that all of the information, research is more publicly and privately available. That makes sense, yes, yeah.
I just want to say to like his point, China is moving a militarized system in space.
Yeah.
And, so I don't think that's good, and I don't think we should be helping them with that. So I think it makes sense to have a lot of the space technology under very strict InfoSec, and maybe different levels of confidentiality.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my question was, do you have a lot of historical data or like records that are like not even digitized? Because I remember that's a challenge.
Yeah, I think that there was an effort to digitize everything, go back through. I mean, I've seen some like 1963 reports, you know.
A lot of the best research we did was, like, for instance, on like nuclear propulsion stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It was in the 60s, but the people who did it are like retired or they're passed away.
Yeah, and it kind of goes with them, when they retire.
And
So.
there's like tacit knowledge that's lost. So now there's an effort to like try to preserve all that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Sure. Any other questions?
But like I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about helping our national security.
Yeah. Right. And when something is classified, it doesn't move from that classification. So only those with the need to know. So I mean, primarily this is focusing on things that can be shared to broader. Yes. All right.
To kind of pick up on that understanding, is sort of the digitized need to know, like with proper permissions, one of the desired outcomes, such that folks with the right credentials or keys or NFTs or identification can access those as needed.
Right.
As opposed to currently if you just send out a link, you're like you don't know where it'll end up.
Yes.
Like verify with an email, but like we don't know if that email's busted.
Exactly.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, and it's almost the way it's set up. There's all different levels of classification. CUI, then there's secret, top secret. Then you have secret compartmented information. Then you have SAPs. You have all these different. So it's almost like you can't get into a SCIF if you don't have the credentials. So there's a credentialing issue, and you won't be able to access that information if you don't have the badge and able to access the SCIF.
So is it basically digitizing that physical process, or would you, theoretically, in the ideal case, still need to enter a SCIF in order to then log in with your digital credentials and then access the information?
Yes, you'd have to be able to access the SCIF.
You would
So
still need
you still need access to SCIF. So it's almost like a natural, barrier
I see.
to, if you're not at the right level, you can't see it anyway. So.
Whereas the terminal might use blockchain technology to affirm at the sort of like the next level, so you use the SCIF to say, hey, you have the right credentials, go and access this information for this time period.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you know?
Sure. So is it kind of like a system where it's like you make like UFO DAO and then just like next week like 4 people with like the aviator sunglasses show up and say, hey, we're just super interested in joining, and then they kind of just like slow leak everything but don't give out the cool stuff?
It's exactly how it works.
Okay.
That's right. Good time. There's some characters in the space industry, I'll tell you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so you said that once things have a classification, they don't really move. But there are instances where research or sort of discoveries that are public, through public science, starts to basically produce the same sort of outcomes or results or papers get produced elsewhere that match classified documentation?
No, yeah, if
So
you,
how do you start?
So that's a
evaluating
challenge.
That should be declassified.
Exactly. Disparately, the pieces of data are not classified, but when you bring them together, it creates that classification, the need for classification. I know I'm almost done. But yeah, no, so that's another challenge too, where that's kind of a crazy thing. And we do have to get, papers reviewed by the government before they're released through the right classification channels, just to reaffirm that data aggregation is not making something classified, ramping it up to a different level. Yes.
So basically, it's not necessarily what the material itself is like in that particular classification as much as in the context of what can be inferred from other information that becomes that classification issue.
Yeah, right. Yes. Like separately, sources and methods, that's what makes the classification when you're getting specific about how did the adversary do this, when and where, all those pieces. Disparately, not classified, but when you put it together, yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, time to go? Okay. Very well. Okay, last one.
I was just going to ask, how many resources are currently being put into this type of information management internally? Is this like, priority number 2, 10,
Yeah.
5?
Yeah, it's so we're still trying to we're still working on the influence campaign to find the internal funds to be able to even start this. We've got to develop the enterprise architecture, what it would look like, better understanding who would be resourced to take on this big task. But right now, we just individually are searching. It's just unfortunate that so much research has been done, and for folks like universities that just can't access, you don't know what you don't know. So it's that hurdle we're trying to overcome. So, well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.